you can trust the body. It's just that the mind will tell you you can't trust the body. This whole thing is really about why doesn't the mind like us to feel intense emotions? Why doesn't the mind like us to feel fear and so forth? Because it loses control. The mind loses its grip. We're actually called to just fully feel the experience. And for various reasons, some of them we actually learn from our parents and learn to fit in and so forth. We learn to actually stuff that down and suppress it because it makes you look weak. It makes you look like a victim. It makes you, for a short time, maybe non-functional, whatever. But the truth of it is, when you really start looking closely, the body's experience of an emotion, especially when we experience it very directly, is rather intense and direct, but it's actually rather short-lived, especially fear. Fear tends to come and go within a few minutes. But the thing is, when that's the deal with, like, panic, anxiety, and then even PTSD, is like the narrative we carry out of that, that's sort of laden with thought, is that, I have to do everything I can to avoid that from happening again. You can't really prevent anything in that way exactly, but you can continue to distract yourself with your mind again and again and again. But what happens then, of course, is the emotions build up underneath that, and then they come out one way or another, or your life gets extremely contracted, which happens with, like, chronic PTSD. Um, so yeah, the problem isn't in the body, really. The problem is in the mind with that. The problem is you have one intense emotional experience, but the mind doesn't let you forget about it and relives it over and over and over and over and over. But it relives it in an avoidant way, in a disassociated way. It's like trying to push something away. So all this comes down to ends up being the way we push and pull on thought, actually. We can't actually resist anything. We don't really resist things in the physical world. We resist our mental version of it. We resist a memory of it. We resist a fabrication of it. But we're actually pushing and pulling on thoughts all day long. And so what I would suggest is finding a way to really have a much more neutral relationship with thought itself, with any thought. Start with the easy ones and then move to ones that are more like, fearful thoughts. But ultimately, finding the way that works for you, because I describe it in all kinds of different ways and different people describe it, but you can find the way that works well for you to have a very neutral relationship with thought, or a more and more neutral relationship with thought, such that you're not pushing and pulling on thoughts in your own mind. And you will be so happy. You have the capacity to not react within thought. But part of the key of that is disidentifying from thought enough to realize it's not you that thought is about. It's not about anything. It's just a thought. And it's also not controlling the world. It's not controlling what's going to happen next. That's the other belief that thoughts kind of use to bind us in, that by focusing on the thought in the right way, pushing and pulling on it, wanting it and not wanting it, somehow that is like some kind of voodoo that controls the external reality, that controls what's going to happen in the next minute. It doesn't. So we have fears of thoughts as if, like, if that thought occurs, it's going to make something happen. We also have these, like, sort of attachments to thoughts that I need to think about things in a certain way to cause what I want to happen. But all of that is la la land. The underlying mechanism is pushing and pulling on thoughts. It's reactivity toward thoughts. And it's one of those things that when people see this, and sometimes people see it early on, and then sometimes people see it in pretty, like, later stage of realization, but they realize, like, oh my God, I've never reacted to anything. I've never actually resisted anything except thought. It's only thought. And when you see that clearly, and you see obviously that there's only, the only thing there is thought, and it's consciousness. Thought is made out of consciousness. You're taking yourself to be the consciousness, but it's just really consciousness. And then it can become very, very neutral. I would encourage you to look at, like, my playlist called Consciousness. Look at some of those exercises. Work with any of the meditations I give about how to sort of remain in a neutral space within consciousness and in relation to thoughts. And the other part of it is, when the body starts feeling something, anything, just let it feel that. Just say to yourself, okay, you can be here. Whatever's moving through, you can be here. If it's some kind of fear, let's let the fear be here, and let's not touch it with thought. Let's not, like, don't push the thoughts away necessarily, but just put your attention down into the body and just say, you can be here. Let's see how long you last. You can be here for a few minutes, and your body may actually start to have a pretty hot response to it, pretty intense experience. But notice, I don't have to label this. I actually don't have to. I don't have to label it anything. I can just let it be here and then let it move through. Do that a few times and you'll notice that you can do that. Do that a bunch of times and you'll notice that actually the intensity of the experience is often defined by the labels of the experience. And it will become less intense for sure. It'll become much more tolerable. Then it'll start to become, over time, it actually becomes enjoyable to sort of remain in the body sense, even when there's, intense energies moving through. But that's kind of a separate practice that's more situational. That's just teaching you that, okay, in the moment when there's an emotional experience, I can totally handle it. I can handle it by just touching it, being as close as possible, and actually overtly giving it permission to be here. Just saying, it's okay. We're okay. You can be here. You can be here. Let's just feel what's happening. And then other times when the mind is a little more calm, or you have meditation time, work more with that consciousness experience that I'm talking about.